Hello, today we're going to talk about top trends in vegetable crops. My name is Annette Wszelaki. I'm the Commercial Vegetable Extension Specialist for the University of Tennessee. The first trend we're going to talk about is purple produce, and this is really a fun one. It could really add something to a farmer's market if you're the purple produce person. There's all sorts of vegetables out there that have purple varieties now, and here are just a few of those and just one of each of those varieties, and there's lots of varieties within a crop. So lots of purple peppers out there. This is tequila. It's a nice one because you really get about 3 colors out of the pepper. You'll get a green and a cream and a purple color out of it. And then there's purple haze there in the middle, the carrots, and that's a fun one. The Brussels sprouts, one variety of purple Brussels sprouts is called rhubarb, and then in the bottom left-hand corner there, those are Stokes purple sweet potatoes. And right now they're exclusively licensed to growers in North Carolina and California. But I'm sure as time goes on, we'll see more and more purple varieties come into the market. They're another fun one, and they tend to be really sweet and a dense potato. Purple passion is the asparagus there in the middle. Again, an interesting thing to have at the market. And then the last one is the purple cauliflower. There are several varieties of purple cauliflower on the market. Graffiti is probably one of the most famous, but more folks are putting out purple varieties. An important thing to note if you're going to be selling purple varieties at the market is the purple coloring is caused by anthocyanins, and so you want to be sure that you tell people if they boil them, they're going to lose that beautiful purple color because those pigments are water soluble, so they're going to go out into the water and not stay in the crop, and then they're going to get a kind of a gray tinge to them, which really isn't as aesthetically appealing. So these can be eaten raw, or you can roast them and they'll retain their color nicely. The next thing we're going to talk about is turmeric and ginger. And I got this slide set from Paul and Allison Wiedeger of Au Naturel Farm up in Kentucky. And they're in southern Kentucky, about an hour and a half from Nashville. And they're really pioneers in high tunnels in our area. They started growing in high tunnels probably about 20-25 years ago now. And turmeric and ginger is something that we're seeing catch on, and it grows very well in high tunnels in our area. So these slides are from their first year of growing ginger. And you're going to get ginger as rhizomes. And I'll show you the rhizome source at the end of the slides where we're talking about ginger. But you don't just want to go and buy rhizomes at the grocery store because you don't know if they've been treated with anything. And you want to make sure that the rhizomes that you're getting are virus-free. And that's really important. So you want to make sure you're getting them from a source that can certify that the rhizomes are virus-free. So you're going to pre-sprout those rhizomes before you plant them. And the way to do that, as you can see here, they are using a crate and they put potting mix in the bottom, then they put their rhizomes down, then they're going to put more potting mix on top. And here's those sprouted rhizomes coming out of the crates now. And then they transplanted their rhizomes on June 17th. And this was about 3 weeks later than they had hoped to get them in. So they had hoped to get them in at the end of May. You can see they dug a nice trench there and just laid those rhizomes down in the trench. Then they did their first top dressing and hilling about 2 weeks later. So on July 5th, they top dressed and hilled the ginger. And here they are after the first hilling, just like you would an Irish potato. Here's a clump of ginger at the end of July, so about 6 weeks in. You can see it's got some nice growth on it. And then they were really itching to do a harvest. So in the end of September, they dug up about 6 row feet of ginger. And this is a beautiful little baby pink ginger here. You can see that nice pink tinge to it. So a lot of ginger was under there for September, even though this was a little bit early for a harvest. Here's their whole crop yield from that first harvest there. Then they did another harvest in early December, and you can see the yield from their ginger here. And ginger and turmeric are both nice crops because they really bring a good bit of money per square foot. So in Tennessee, in farmers markets, we see ginger and turmeric selling anywhere from about $13 to $20 a pound. So on a square foot basis, that's some good real estate in your high tunnel. And turmeric, we're not going to talk about itself, but it's grown the exact same way. So you'll get rhizomes, and then you'll pre-sprout them just like we did with the ginger. And both are fairly easy crops to grow and do well in the tunnels. A few key points to talk about in ginger and turmeric production. You want to make sure that you're pre-sprouting them before you're planting. You just don't want to put those rhizomes into the ground. They're a hungry crop, and they're going to need both a lot of food and water. So you want to make sure that you're fertilizing them regularly. Every time you're hilling them, you're going to be fertilizing them. And they're going to need to be hilled 2 or even 3 times throughout the season. And you want to make sure that you top dress them when you're hilling. You also want to make sure that you water deep before it gets dry, at least 2 times per week. Of course, that's going to vary depending on the year you have and how hot it's getting in those tunnels. In warmer climates, they may even need shading, so you want to be mindful of that as well. They are a subtropical crop, so they do like warmer soil temperatures between 55 and 90 degrees, and that's why they do so well in a tunnel. The ginger source, where the Weedigers get their ginger and others that I know that are growing ginger in Tennessee, is HawaiianOrganicGinger.com. And you want to make sure, if you think you want to grow ginger or turmeric, that you are planning to do it at least the fall before, if not the summer before, that you're going to want those rhizomes, because these folks sell out quickly. So start now for next year. The next thing we're going to talk about is chickpeas, corn, and fungi. And corn we're all pretty familiar with, and many have grown for many, many years. But there's this new idea of plant butchery, which is a term I wasn't familiar with until I started putting this presentation together. And we're seeing a resurgence in the number of butcher shops around the United States. And those butcher shops also want to cater to vegetarian audiences. So this plant butchery is taking protein sources and different plant sources and making meat alternatives that look like meat and taste a lot like meat, but they're all vegetable based. So that's the idea behind this plant butchery. So corn is a good filler there, as well as mushrooms, and we've seen a lot of mushroom production in the last 10 years. So that one's not as new and novel, but chickpeas I want to spend a little bit of time on. I think they would add a nice bit of variety to a CSA basket, because there's something that you can dry down and use when your basket is a little light one week, and they'll also add variety to your market offerings as well. Chickpeas are a drought-tolerant crop, and they're a cool season legume, and they're often grown in the semi-arid tropics as a winter annual. The plants are going to grow about 1.5 feet to 2 feet tall, and they're going to have 1 to 2 seeds per pod. So you can see the pods there in the middle photo at the bottom, and also on the right-hand side. And you're just going to get 1 or 2 chickpeas per pod, as you can see there. And the plant looks a lot like a vetch plant. And there are 2 different types. There's Desi, which is a smaller chickpea, and Kabuli, which is the one we're more familiar with in the United States, which is a larger chickpea, and the one that you can see there on the left. We do have commercial production of chickpeas in the United States, but it is concentrated right now in California and eastern Washington and Idaho. In California, they plant late in the fall and they harvest late in the spring. In Washington, they plant in the spring and then harvest in the summer. And the average yield in California are about 1,500 pounds per acre. And in Washington, they're a little over 2,200 pounds per acre. The nice thing about chickpeas is they do not require high levels of moisture. Again, they're drought tolerant, and actually excessive irrigation is not good for chickpeas. It can cause disease, it can delay your harvest, and it'll also promote excessive vegetative growth, which we don't want. We want those chickpeas off of the plants. They can either be planted in solid stands, either 6 to 12 inch row spacing, or on wide rows, 22 to 30 inches, depending on what kind of equipment you have and you're planning to use. They also have a really low nutrient requirement because they're a legume, so they're only going to need 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre. When it's time to harvest the chickpeas, it's going to require that the plants are uniformly mature and dry if you're going to use machinery like a small plot combine or even a larger combine if you wanted to grow chickpeas on a larger scale. The immature plants, when you go to harvest, are going to produce a dark discolored immature seed. It's not going to be marketable. So this is something we're going to do a little trialing on in Tennessee this fall and spring, and see a good time to grow chickpeas in Tennessee that we can utilize in our community-supported agriculture program here. The next one is repurposed food waste. And this gets back to the idea that people are really wanting to use everything that they purchase at the farmer's market. So this is either a way for you to pass on consumer education at the market or to make value-added products that you can sell along with your produce at the market. There's many examples of ways you can repurpose food waste. This is just 3 that I ran across. The first one is watermelon seeds. So these are high in antioxidants and nutrients, and folks are packaging them up and selling them like pumpkin seeds. The next one is using the rind of the watermelon and making pickles out of the watermelon rind. So now we've utilized every part of the watermelon. We have the fruit, we have the seeds, and we have the rind. And the last one is just, instead of throwing away those cauliflower stems, using them as a rice alternative. So we see a lot of people looking for starch alternatives. Cauliflower ricing is one, but we often think of just ricing that top part of the cauliflower or the floury part instead of the stem. So this is utilizing every bit of that cauliflower as well. The last trend we're going to talk about is the trend in ethnic vegetable production. And this can really serve 2 purposes. One, it can serve the needs of growing ethnic populations around the country, but it can also expand the crop offerings that you have at the market. So instead of having the traditional round red tomato, now you have some more unique things that people say, hey, I still want my tomatoes, but these folks have some neat stuff and we're going to go and buy from them because they have things that nobody else in the market has. Of course, with any new crop, you want to identify your market first. You don't want to go and jump into things and then not be able to sell them. So you definitely want to identify a market, and we'll jump to the last point that a little goes a long way, and you want to start small until you know that you can sell a particular crop. The next thing when you're thinking about ethnic vegetables is when you're serving a particular ethnic population in your community, you want to be really specific in the language you're using in your labeling. Because what one country might call a certain vegetable crop might be different in another country. So you want to be sensitive to that. And if you know the makeup of your ethnic community, that goes a long way in relating to them and selling your vegetable crops. The other thing is, if you're expanding your crop offerings and you're selling these things in an area where people haven't really utilized them before, it's important to provide recipes on how to cook that particular vegetable. So Asian vegetables are very popular. Lots of leafy things like tatsoi and bok choy. Lots of Asian eggplants out there. And instead of the traditional Italian globes, the big purple eggplants, the Asian eggplants tend to be very skinny and longer, about 1 inch wide and maybe 8 to 10 inches long, and just a variety of colors. Purples, whites, variegated, just beautiful eggplants out there. There are also Turkish eggplants that are yellow, and there's Kermit that's a little round ball eggplant that's green. Edamame is another one that does great in Tennessee because we have a large amount of soybean acreage in West Tennessee, and edamame is just an immature soybean. This one's pretty mainstream anymore, but it does do well here. And it can be tricky to pick it all. One tactic you can use to sell it at the market is just to yank the plants out, tie a string around them, and string them up at the market, and then your customers get that value-added experience of getting to pick them off the plant when they get home. You do want to make sure, if people haven't used edamame before, that you mention that they want to steam them before they try to shell them, or you might have some dissatisfied customers that won't be back next week for another batch of edamame. So you want to keep that in mind. Kabocha squash, lots of interesting types of squashes in the Asian vegetables, as well as daikon radish, yard-long beans, bitter melon, mung beans, and we see turmeric, which we talked about earlier on this list. For the Hispanic vegetables, for Tennessee, Megan LeFew with the Center for Profitable Agriculture did a nice publication several years ago that you see there at the bottom of the screen called The Growing Hispanic Population in Tennessee. And it goes through and really highlights different populations throughout the state, so we can see where we have a concentration of the Hispanic population in our state. And that's really good to know if you're in that county where you might have a good potential to sell some of these Hispanic vegetables. So amaranth is the first one. This is a cousin of pigweed, and we know if you're a grower in Tennessee that we can grow pigweed very well here. The amaranth for Hispanic cultures, they grow it for the leaf. So there are varieties that are particularly grown for the leaf. In African culture, they use a grain amaranth in a lot of their cooking. So it's a different sort of amaranth, but you'll see them both listed in vegetable catalogs. Calabaza is a specialized type of pumpkin used in many cultures on a daily basis. They put pumpkin in with their rice and beans. So it's something that they're buying every single week at the market. They don't save it up for Thanksgiving oftentimes like we do here. Chayote is a little squash that you can see there in the photo, the bottom middle picture. Cilantro, of course, as an herb, and then squash blossoms. We often think of Hispanic culture in hot peppers, but they utilize many different types of peppers, from sweet to hot peppers. So again, it's really important to know the specific country of your Hispanic population so you know what sort of peppers they use in their culture. We see turmeric show up again, so it appeals to a wide range of cultures. Tomatillo is tomato's cousin, and then verdolaga is purslane. Again, if you're a grower here, you know that we are very good at growing purslane as a weed. This type that is domesticated that they use in Hispanic culture is more upright than the purslane that we see out in the field that's laying on the ground. So there are cultivated varieties of purslane out there to grow. So that's all I have for you on vegetable trends. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at annettew@utk.edu. Have a great day.